lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Jeremy Lee in the building and every guest that you ever needed. Sports cards after hours keep the hobby heated. Updates, hobby talk like you never seen it. Sports cards live and none could ever beat it. Sports cards is a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Welcome to another episode of Sports Cards Live with your host, Jeremy Lee.
All right, everybody, and welcome to episode number 222 of Sports Cards Live. It's Saturday night, March the 30th, 2024, and my name is Jeremy Lee, and I would like to thank everybody who tuned in last time for we had a Just Jeremy episode, followed by After Hours with Joe Perreault. Thanks, everybody who tuned in for that. Next Saturday show up in the air. I may not be able to do one. We will see, but the PWCC Weekly Hockey Show is back tomorrow night with Josh Madigan from the Hockey Cards Gong Show. And I would like to ask you to download the Center Stage app on iOS or Android for quick and accurate comps, card identification. And please join me in supporting the great team they have and the innovation they are undertaking at the Center Stage app. And also use protection, practice safe swaps. VeriSwap, it's an app and middleman service that lets you securely trade cards through the mail, fully insured up to $1 million. Download the VeriSwap app on iOS and Android and join me and VeriSwap founder Raymond Lee every second Tuesday on Instagram for the live VeriSwap trade desk. Also, Filth Bomb Breaks offers live case and box breaks, and they do so with responsibility and integrity. If you enjoy group breaking and you are looking for a company to break with, please check out Filth Bomb streaming on Fanatics Live on 4 channels, 7 days a week. I'd also like to shout out Hobby News Daily and congratulate them on their 1-year anniversary today. They just finished a 4-hour live marathon. I got to go on for a few minutes. And just again, congratulations, all the great work they are doing there, aggregating some great content from over 20 writers, podcasts, and articles. Really cool things going on there. And Leighton Sheldon from Just Collect will be joining us for the Vintage Spotlight segment a little bit later tonight. And I also want to thank the Hockey Cards Gong Show for having me on as the guest host on their Wednesday night episode earlier this past week. That was a lot of fun. Check that out on their YouTube channel. And if you value consistency and transparency in grading, check out taggrading.com for that sort of grading. As always, I want to thank all of our loyal viewers and listeners. And if you are not yet subscribed to the YouTube channel or to the podcast, please take a moment and do so. I would greatly appreciate that. And as always tonight, your comments and your questions are in play. So let's get to it. All right, here we go, guys. Tonight's guest started in the hobby in 1978, riding his bike to the toy store to buy rack packs looking for Reggie Jacksons, Pete Rose, Willie McCovey, and Jack Clark. He collected through 1987 and didn't come back until early 2021 when he went to sell some cards to buy a new refrigerator for the house, and it led to his rediscovering his passion for collecting. He started his podcast, the Rated Rabbi Sports Card Podcast, in March of 2023 and just dropped episode number 65. His favorite players of all time are Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, Barry Bonds, Tim Lincecum, Steph Curry, and Hakeem Olajuwon. And his favorite teams of all time are the San Francisco Giants, the San Francisco 49ers, the Golden State Warriors, and my Calgary Flames. He's originally from San Francisco, California, currently hailing out of Alexandria, Virginia. Let's bring him out. David Spinrad. Welcome to Sports Cards Live. How are you, bud?
Thank you, Jeremy. It is great to be here. I'm super excited. I've never actually been in the audience during the live. I listen every Sunday morning on my morning walk. So tomorrow I'm going to be in for a treat. I'm going to get to listen to us tomorrow.
I have to ask, so as a fellow content creator now, I always find it interesting whether or not you watch your own stuff. So I don't go back and watch my own show. I mean, very rarely if I need to find something, but that almost never happened actually. So, but I will listen to me on other people's shows. I don't know why. It sounds What about you? Do you ever listen to your own podcast or how does that go for you?
Not only do I listen to myself on my own podcast, there are many times where I am absolutely certain that I am actually creating something for me as the audience. And my wife will catch me listening to the show, like, be in the kitchen doing the dishes. Are you listening to your own podcast, sweetheart? Well, yeah, I mean, I really like it. I've kind of made it for me. And she said, don't you think that's a little bit narcissistic? I'm like, well, I mean, I don't know, it makes me happy.
Your wife's calling you out on, well, I always find that interesting. Well, I hope you enjoy listening to this show. And I just want to say good morning, David. Enjoy your walk this morning. I hope you're having a nice sun is shining for you as you're listening to this day after. Well, welcome everybody to the show where we are live. We got some people on Instagram. It's harder to see the comments on Instagram, guys, but if you want to come over to YouTube, that would be great. I want to welcome everybody who's watching us on X and Twitter, on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn, and of course, Instagram. David, let's get into it. Let's get into a little bit about your hobby history, and just give us a bit. I talked a bit about it in the intro, but give us your version a bit about how the hobby kind of grasped you at first and where we're at now.
Yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, it was sports all the time. So that was as many cards as we could ever buy, and playing with them and trading them, and yeah, just in the neighborhood, loving collecting cards. And then, like so many people, went off to college and had many years where I kind of kept it light in terms of possessions, and I lived in a lot of different places. So I had my childhood collection, my mom and dad's, but I wasn't really acquiring a lot of stuff. And then during COVID, like so many people, but it wasn't right away for me. It wasn't kind of last dance time. Everything was shut down, but being a rabbi, it's kind of like being a first responder. So while people were making sourdough bread and binge watching Tiger King, people were super freaked out and wanting to talk to me all the time. And kind of meanwhile, like, listen, lady, I'm going through the same crazy pandemic as you are. So between being a husband and a father and a congregational rabbi, I realized that it had been many, many, many years since I really had any space for myself. And it was right around the time, about a year into COVID, maybe a little bit less, when that biggest 86 Jordan sale was, right? When was that? January, maybe?
That was January 2021 on Golden auctions. Yeah, two of them that night.
Yeah. So that hit like critical mass consciousness. It was in, it went out of the hobby into mainstream news. And I heard about it. Called my buddy, childhood Adam K. He was the kid I used to ride my bike to that toy store with, lifelong friend. And he'd kind of went in and out, but more was in the hobby over the years. And I kind of just picked his brain. I said, how do I know what these things are worth? He showed me how to use eBay. God, that eBay, man. How much more time would I have if it wasn't on my phone? And I'm like, I'm going to sell these. We had a really crummy fridge, and I had a bunch of 86 Fleer, didn't have the Jordan, but had, those cards were super hot, and was going to sell them, buy us a new fridge. And, well, I did sell the cards, but I spent all that money and much more, getting back into the hobby. And it's been a really amazing 3+ years since then.
That's well, welcome back. Really. I just want to say, welcome back to the hobby. Let's get into, I want to get into the meat of the show. I feel like we're not going to have time to get through everything that I want to talk about with you. So, but we are going to take a minute and just say hello to who has joined us in the chat. Mookie Chilson is so excited for the Rated Rabbi. Great booking. Thank you, Mookie. Always good to have you here. The professor is with us. Tom Newman. What's going on, Tom? 86 is here. As always, Jeff McMahon. As always, Robert Scott. Good to see you. Dodger Town 76. What's going on, hobby people? Good to see you. Dan's Vintage is here. Says hello. Mark Santucci is here. Good to see you. Jeffrey Hart is here. Good to see you, Jeff Hart. Good to see you. Orlando from A Collector's Dream. Justin Bode. Bob Boozle says Tiger King, Last Dance, Sports Cards Live, etc. during the pandemic. I appreciate that, Bob Boozle. And good to see you. Mid-Atlantic says David has the best logo in the hobby. I got to say, I do love the Rated Rabbi logo. Stukes is with us. What's going on? Cardboard Corner. Joe Perot says NorCal represent. 1956 Tops guy. Matthew is here. Good to see you, Matthew. Great to see you. Mark says, I remember the stationery store and the convenience stores. Of course. Oh, I see you're in the comments too already, David. Very good. Very good. Clay Phillips, welcome to the show. 90s is here. Good to see you. And Simon is here, who I shared the screen with earlier today on the Hobby News Daily first anniversary show. All right. Why do you collect, Dave? Why do you collect? let's just open it up with that big question. We're talking
Yeah,
spirituality, the essence of sports cards. I'm going to open it up with, why do you collect, David?
Yeah. Well, Jeremy, that's usually my question to ask you. But since you beat me to it, I'll answer it. But you have to also. Is that a deal?
Fair
All
enough, fair enough.
right. I really do regard this card collecting as a spiritual practice. It's not a religion, and the difference between that to me is spirituality is something that comes from within, right? Where you're able to listen to your own inner voice and learn to trust yourself. And kind of religion, well, it has value. It's something that comes from the outside. Sometimes it can be experienced as something that people are telling you, or some resource, some kind of text is telling you. So to me, I think card collecting at its best is a spiritual practice, right? So in terms of the hobby, it would be, are we listening to influencers all the time, or are we actually listening to ourselves? So for me, it becomes about getting to know myself and expressing myself through something that I get to create, that really, like, I really take the word personal in a PC, I take it to heart. So I collect to learn. I'm a lifelong learner, right? So I love the process of learning. I collect to learn. I collect because I want to create something beautiful and personal and meaningful. It's something when you look at my cards, you would kind of get to know me, right? I collect because there's this really neat tension. It's not just in the hobby, but for sure we experience it between just loving our cards, right? Just opening our cards, just loving them, and just taking so much satisfaction and appreciation. And then that positive tension between that and just that feeling of desire, like, that next card, right? And that beautiful tension of appreciation and desire, and to try to balance it with some kind of self-discipline. That's a nice thing to develop. So those are some of the reasons why I collect. Yeah.
And do you find that the sports card hobby, does it make you a better person? Is there anything in the world of being a collector, being a hobbyist, being a sports card collector, that has improved you as a person? Does anything that your wife might point to and say, ever since you started collecting, you've become this or that? I know it's kind of open-ended, but anything there?
Yeah. So I think it's helped me be happier, right? It's helped me just to have a little space for myself, which has reconnected me. I think when we collect it, we get to touch a piece of our childhood again, and it's really important. It's play, right? It's play, and I think that's really important for our souls. And then the question, if you ask my wife, I think she sees me be happier. She sees me, I'd be able to leave work at home a little bit more, or leave work at work and just come home and just be me. So yeah, I think she would say that.
No, that's good. No, that's good to know. I mean, sometimes I feel like when we, if you're a youngster, for example, and you're in the hobby collecting and you're actually, transacting, I think you can learn some of those transactional skills as a youngster. While as an adult, maybe it just makes us, feel more, like you said, we're more introspective. Maybe we get to know ourselves better. Maybe we can become more patient. Maybe we can just the simplicity in the collecting, in these simple little 2.5 by 3.5 inches of cardboard canvas. Yet we can find, so as collectors, as sports fans or non-sports fans, we can become so passionate and connected to these things. And I think a lot of us, I know me and you share that. Everyone, I got to think everybody watching right now probably has a bit of that they can say, yeah, you know what, that applies to me too. I want to bring up Dan's comment here. Listening to ourselves, absolutely wonderful concept. Instead of listening to what everyone else is doing or following what everyone else is collecting or the trends, be true to yourself first, I think is a great thing. Dan goes on to say, similar to collect what you love, collect what speaks to you, and collect cards that have meaning to you. Exactly. I think that's really well said right there, Dan. Luke says, going for my grail at auction tonight. Wish me luck. Good luck, Luke. Good luck picking up that card. Bobby Baseball, at minimum, I think that creating a PC is an act of self-expression, appreciation of greatness, and a pursuit that makes one feel simply ageless. Yeah. I think those are some great comments, guys. So yeah, thanks for sharing them into the chat there. You'd mentioned to me, I just have it in my notes here, this in the system of objects. You want to share that quote?
Yeah.
Do you have that handy?
Yeah, it's a 1960s French philosopher and sociologist and poet, this guy Jean Baudrillard. I did not read the book. I saw the quote on a wall at the Smithsonian in this really cool model car display. And the quote is, for what you collect is always yourself. And going back to what we were talking about just a couple of minutes ago, that if you look at my collection, I would hope that you would know me, right? So it would be an expression of a love of it's like something beautiful and clear, right? I'll never have the biggest collection. One of the great blessings for me, Jeremy, coming back in now is I actually, when I kind of looked out at the hobby landscape, I can't have a huge collection and have the cards I want, right? Because I wasn't able to leverage the appreciation of, say, 30 years in the hobby with the boom. That would be a whole different experience. But, like all of us, you gotta get in where you fit in. And I got in at the peak. Fortunately, I didn't make too many big purchases, and the ones that I did, I love. So I feel okay. And the ones that I didn't love, I took little haircuts rather than hold them. But collecting myself is I just want this like small, beautiful collection. Well, I think one of the things we talked about off air was there's also a piece of collecting where it puts me in touch with my mortality. And I'll tell you in a couple different ways. When I buy a card, I really do go, well, what's the destination for this card? Yeah. If I'm going to buy it because I'm thinking I'm going to keep it, is there a market for me to sell it? And I don't usually buy to sell. I did when they were it was ridiculous. But a lot of my sales during the boom were my own childhood collection that people were buying, off-centered 1979 Fran Tarkingtons on eBay. So that's actually how I built my original nest egg. But just a small, beautiful collection that's kind of me.
I do love that quote. For what you really collect is always yourself. It speaks to, again, as you said, if you look at my collection, you can get to know me. And there's a difference between collecting cards that you have personal nostalgia for, or cards of events, teams, players, sports that mean a lot to you. When you do that, I feel like you are being true to yourself, and I feel like you are buying cards that are going to form your personal collection, so that maybe if someone does look at you or look at your collection, they might feel like they know you a bit better. They're going to know a little bit more. What are they going to know? Maybe they'll know who your favorite team was as a kid, or now. Maybe they'll know what players you identified with. Even this by sport. Are you collecting baseball, football, basketball? Are you collecting the combat sport?
Yeah.
The combat sport type of card, the UFC, the wrestling, and what players are speaking to you. Are you collecting Dennis Rodman, or are you collecting Jean Beliveau from the classiest man to ever play sports sort of thing, professional sports? So maybe people do get to know you. And then there's the eras. There's all the different eras of cards that we are always, if you collect all cards, you're looking from the earliest to the most modern, and people can see just how into history you might be. So I think that definitely hits home with me.
Can I ask that same question back? So how does that? How would I know you by your collection?
Well, I think you would. That's what I was thinking. I think you would see that I'm a hockey fan. I think you would probably figure out that I might be from Winnipeg. That I might. There's a couple players there that in my childhood that I still have collections of. You might see that I respect the pioneers of all the sports and those who were really great at what they did. You might see that I'm a fan of some of the modern day superstars as well. You'll also notice that I'm not interested in modern day quarterbacks, the ultra modern quarterbacks. You might see that I'm not interested in wrestling or UFC cards. Nothing against it, but just wasn't something that I was really excited about as a kid. I watched up until like Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage, and that's kind of the AWA, even before there was a WWF, never mind WWE. So, but you might say I like shiny cards, and some Shaquille O'Neal, some Ken Griffey Jr. that kind of thing. So, but what I also think, David, with all this is that our collections evolve over
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And why? So if you look at a PC and think, oh, I feel like I know you now. Well, you know me at that particular moment in time. But along with our PCs evolving, we as humans are always evolving. So I think it makes sense that our PCs evolve. You were allowed to move on from things and on to others. Like you said, you made a few mistakes and you're there. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, that was great, especially that end part. I think that's a really great addition, right? Who you were 10 years ago is not who you are now, and not who you'll be in 10 years, but there'll be still some core elements that'll be unchanging. That's cool.
Right. Which actually, it's funny, this wasn't even planned, but I'm looking back at my notes and I see my next question for you is going to be, how have you evolved as a collector since coming back as recently as 2021? So again, that wasn't a planned segue, but it sure worked out well.
Yeah.
So yeah, speak about that, because again, this to me, it talks to the title of the episode and the spiritual essence, and just because we need to, well, I don't want to say what anyone needs to do, but I feel for me, I need to allow myself, and I suggest other people don't be so structured. Allow yourself to change direction once in a while. Maybe not completely shift. Maybe you're not going to stop collecting baseball cards and go into football cards, but be a little bit nimble, have some flexibility. So how have you evolved since coming back as recently as you did in 2021?
Yeah. Well, I think the first place to start in that answer is I let myself make mistakes, right? If that's a good life lesson, I tend to be someone, can be really hard on myself. And coming back here as a really a beginner hobbyist, right? I was like a freshman. I made mistakes, and it's a learning curve. And it actually has been a really good instructive thing for life. It's okay. You make a mistake, you learn from it, you move on. So I actually want to see a huge mistake right here. I brought the box to show on camera. This, Jeremy, is one of 3 boxes of 2021 Panini certified. I bought this first month back in the hobby when it was gold rush. It was crazy penny stock boom. And I had just come back in. It was insane. And it was just such a rush of information mixed with nostalgia, mixed with an ear on people are making money hand over fist. Not always. So again, learning from mistakes and then making fun of myself. When I first made this mistake, the me who made this mistake never would have told anybody, let alone come on your show and talk about it. I bought 3 boxes of this and 1 box of the limited football. And all in all, this one was a loss. And the other ones were, after eBay took their feed, they were also a loss. So there's a learning curve and paying tuition and being okay with making a mistake. I think that's something that's changed. There is always another beautiful example on its way. I think that's the second thing I would say is that do not stand in the kitchen without my glasses at 10:38 on a Sunday night because I gotta just go to bed, Spinrad. There's another one coming and another one and another one. Okay, unless it's the one of something. But if it's whatever it is, a vintage card for the most part, there's always more on their way. So I think that's another thing. How I've changed. There's less urgency. And then I think the last piece is I really understand for me what it is to create a unique collection for me. I don't want a collection that's anybody else's. And that might be the biggest thing that's changed of all is I have a master set of the 1984 All-Star Game, which is emblematic of that. No one else has that. And that feels good. It's my collection.
Right on. Yeah. So as far as evolving, is there anything, is there anything that you feel, let me put it quite simply, actually, what's the one most important takeaway that you've experienced over the past 3 years that if you were to want to share with somebody if you're talking to your congregation and they want to learn about sports cards, is there maybe one thing that you would start with or finish with that would really, speak to them and impact them? Anyone who's new to the hobby or that you're speaking to, what do you think you've learned that's the most important thing?
I would say that the thing I'd want, and I'm very measured in how much I talk about it with the congregation. Like, what are we paying you for? Quit playing with baseball cards. So I don't talk about it, although it is on the website on my bio. It's something I'm very proud of because it's restored balance in my life, and it's reminded me not to seem too corny or hokey, but it's really easy to go through life like we're human doings instead of human beings, and it's just reminded me just to enjoy life a little bit, take my foot off the gas, smile, wag more, bark less. Yeah, it's made me hopefully a better, more balanced human being.
So you had mentioned to me that I think you kind of put it that, I have a strength in all this, and my strength, which I say that people aren't going to, you might be surprised when I remind David of what he said his strength was, but he said, you have your strength is your PayPal. Now we're not saying he's got $1 million in the PayPal.
No.
We're saying he uses
No.
uses it to his benefit.
Yeah.
So explain that, because you'll do it much more justice.
Yeah. What it is it's the most valuable thing I have in my PC, right? And each of us as collectors have certain strengths we bring to the table. And it's not a huge amount in my PayPal, but I recognize like that's my leverage point. So if I go into a show, if I'm going to sacrifice that point of leverage, I have to feel like I'm getting something that's commensurate for me, or else I'm just going to hold on to that strength, right? At the end of the day, I've definitely gone to lots of shows and gone home with nothing in my hands except my money in my PayPal. And I just really want to leverage that. I don't always do that, but more and more I recognize that we all have strengths. So if someone is really, card wealthy, that's a great strength. I don't have, at this point, I've sold off and traded up. So I don't have a lot of card inventory to get liquid, but if someone has that, that's a great strength for them. I just don't have that.
Yeah, no, I think it's a neat way to look at it, that you can walk into a card show and know that you got your budget, and it's there when you want it, and when you leave with that budget still intact, number one, you've resisted the temptation to buy something impulsively, and you're well equipped for the next time you go. Now, you came back into the hobby in 2021, as we've said, and I always wonder for all the people that came back during the pandemic, because of the pandemic, how many have stayed? Now, you've stayed, and you've really stayed. I mean, you're committed. It seems like you're a lifer now.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? How many people do you think came back when you did, stayed in the hobby? Like, do you have any friends that did the same thing? What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's a lot, actually. I think there are a lot of sort of people who fit a similar profile to me, kind of middle-aged man who collected when he was a kid. I think there was a huge number, that there was a huge influx across the board. I think when the easy money went away, I think a lot of the people who are in for the easy money, who loved cards, but were also like, the easy money is very attractive, right? I think a lot of them left. I think some of them stayed, for sure, fell in love with cards. And then another kind of side thought is, there are a lot of people sitting on a lot of cards who are way underwater right now. There are a lot of cards that are not in the hobby active. It'd be interesting when they start coming back to see what those do. But back to people who are kind of more like me, I think there's a lot of folks like us, and I think that actually has made, for me, a really interesting hobby experience. Someone like Iowa Dave, if you listen to Iowa Dave, he was on your show. It was a great episode, actually. Similar profile, came back in maybe a little bit earlier than I did, but similar. He's a lifer.
Oh yeah, for sure. All right, we're gonna start the vintage spotlight segment in just a couple of minutes. Leighton, Leighton is there. I just want to do some more comments here and say, Stukes said that collecting has helped me come out of my introvert shell. I think that's because we being the community are so encouraging for people to come to card shows and go to trader nights and come meet people. I think it's just such a great way to introduce social activities to a lot of people who may have otherwise been introverts. So that's great. Mark Santucci said, in looking at cards, the question is, does the card fit the collection? I think does it fit the collection? Does it fit the person who owns the collection? I think that's a great comment from Mark right there. 90 says, I never thought I would hear, I don't even know how to say it, Baudrillard quote on a trading card show. That's what Sports Cards Live's all about there, 90s. You know that. Fatal J says, YouTube sent me here. Don't know why. Guess I will stay here and chill. Fatal J, welcome to the show. Triple V says, when you realize that you are about when you realize what you are about as a collector, there's an inner commitment / love, finding a patient and focused lane to sustain and explore. Nice. That's an interesting comment, Triple V. Very good. Joe Perot says, I did not attend the 1984 All-Star Game at Candlestick, but I did attend the 87 All-Star Game at the Oakland Coliseum, and Tim The Rock Reigns was the MVP. So there you go. Jeremy is here, Mr. Foul 5-ball. And Mookie says, I came back to the hobby around the same time as the rabbi. The best part of missing so much hobby time is that there's so much to learn and explore and collect. And I got to say, I love that about the hobby as well. Mookie, we're still learning. I'm still finding cards I didn't know existed. And I absolutely love that. Vintage says, collecting has given me something to bond over with my son. He's 12 now, and we're headed to our second national in Cleveland. I think that's just awesome to do that with your 12-year-old son. Like, that's a dream for a guy like me who's got a 5-year-old boy. That's just great. And Michael Kadich is here. Welcome, Michael. Good to see you. Says, great guest. Really enjoying Dave's insights. MK, thank you for being here. Mid-Atlantic, there is no comparison between the energy levels it shows today and shows pre-pandemic. The hobby has reset at a much higher level of participation. Yeah, I think that's great. All right, let's bring on Leighton Sheldon for the Vintage Spotlight segment. And David, I've asked you to come with a question for him or topic. I know you have it, so we'll do it. But let's bring him on. There he is, Leighton Sheldon. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you guys tonight?
Good. And do you know Dave? Dave, if not, I wanted to say, meet each other, but I think you guys are familiar with each other. Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that right, Dave?
Yeah, we just talked on the phone not maybe a couple of weeks ago, actually. Yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Leighton, well, welcome back. Hope all is well. And let's just Leighton, unless you have any opening comments, I want to dive into Dave's question for you. But anything you want to say just to kick it off?
No, go right ahead. I appreciate you having me on today.
Of course. Okay, David, let's get into it. The mic is yours.
I've got two questions, and I think they're really good. I'm going to ask them both. Is that all right?
Yeah,
all right.
Go for it, please.
First question, Leighton. I listen to your pod a lot. I really enjoy how you break down new acquisitions, new collections. I love listening to the process, and I'm always really impressed how it's very methodical, and it's very quantitative. And I like how you share it with the person who's selling the collection, how you share it with us. So I appreciate you go home, you have a whole process, right? That how you quantify the transaction. But that's like the head part. What I really want to hear, and I think our audience also would really love it, is the qualitative. What is it like? How do you keep how do your eyes not bulge out? How did your heart not skip a beat? Like, what's that qualitative experience when something is way bigger and better than you like? Talk to us.
Well, it's a great question, David. The first way that I would reply is, and I guess maybe a lot of life for me comes down to, competition, and tennis, for example, is a sport that I, not only follow closely, but I also play. And I know that, for example, like if you play tennis and you play against an opponent, it doesn't really matter if they're better or worse, but if you're really excited, what happens is you tend to flub your shot. So in other words, if you are really super excited, even though you think you're just playing at a regular pace, you tend to hit long, or you might hit into the net. And so the reason why I bring up that analogy is the same thing really with doing anything else that you love professionally for a living. There's absolutely been aha moments where I go in and I'm like, OMG, this is insane. I can't believe, like, I remember, just last summer seeing, 6 figures of vintage cards in like a filing cabinet that was worth $12. And, when they first described the collection, of course, it was nothing the way that it actually appeared in person. But I think what I've been able to do, if I had to say, David, is I've been able to harness that energy in a very authentic and positive way.
Cool.
So I don't try to BS people. In other words, if I see something that is like, holy, this is crazy, then that's going to be my reaction. Now, listen, do I
Nice.
try to keep it a little bit close to the vest because that's what I do professionally? Yes. But I don't find that it really helps me get or obtain a collection. So, I do the best I can to slow down the ball, slow down the game, make sure that, the last point of it is that I'm self-aware. And I do understand that there are going to be collections probably from this day forward, even unfortunately, they're going to be amazing, but I may not be able to buy them for one reason or another. So what I've been able to do, David, is I've been able to make sure that I squeeze the juices out of every situation in life, deals included, so that I can enjoy them. And that even if I don't actually physically get to own the cards, I'm like, wow, what a wonderful experience. And I'll
That's
probably
cool.
take something out of it that's going to help me maybe in the future down the line, whether it be buy another collection or just something else in life.
That's really cool. That's really cool. Thank you. All right. So that one's from the heart. This is a head question. It's a question because Jeremy and I were talking just before you came on air. And I really think there are a lot of people, a lot of collectors in the hobby with kind of similar profiles to me. Collected when we were kids, got back in during COVID, who've stayed. I really think there are more of us. And there are a lot of us who collect vintage. And well, certainly there's no one explanation to completely unpack a phenomenon. The phenomenon is, and certainly this predated the pandemic, but the real focus on high eye appeal, really strong centering, low to mid grade vintage, right? And I think that one factor is there are people like me. Again, I know it predated, but with more of us back in the hobby, an emphasis on high eye appeal for a collector like me who is priced out of a higher grade for the most part, and has also learned from more experienced collectors like the two of you to really buy cards and not grades. So there are a lot of people who are really drawn to those kind of cards. And my question for you is, what is the future of, for example, an old label, lowish eye appeal, mid-grade vintage card, a 1961 Willie Mays PSA 6, so it's collector grade, but it's an old label and it just does nothing for the eye. And most collectors rather have a 5 or even a beautiful 4 at this point. What's the future of those other cards, though?
Great question, David. I think succinctly, the market will determine what's going to happen to those. So in other words, they won't be useless. They won't be rendered uncollectible. The price will just reset in a way that makes sense in the market. So it's a great question. But I think that they'll always have a place, in the hobby. But for example, if a PSA 6 maze with exceptional centering might be $300, then maybe one with, unexceptional centering and an old label is going to be 65% of that, which is going to be $200. My point is there will just be a new foundation, a new base for those cards. And much in the way I feel like we as a hobby have looked at, let's say, like qualifiers. I think the same thing's going to happen with like an old label 6, as you say. In other words, is it going to be a 4? Is it going to drop by 2 grades the way that qualified cards did in the past? I'm not so sure that'll be the case. At the same time, I bet you if you look at the numbers on a really well-centered 4 or 5, there's going to be some people, I think, even in the years to come, that still remain bewildered as to how can that sell for more than a higher grade or a higher number. But I think that's what makes the hobby fantastic, is that there really isn't a right answer. And to be fair, right, there's something about saying when everyone else is zigging, you zag. And so I've asked this on my Instagram post with the 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle recently. Yeah. At what point does the off-centered and not as desirable 6 actually become a deal or value? Meaning if that 4 or 5 that's well-centered keeps going up, theoretically, it's still a 61 Topps maze. Even though it's PSA 6, and I agree with you, David, it's ugly, right? It still has a place in the value chain.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah, David and I kind of winked at each other as you were speaking, Leighton, because I think why we did that, Dave, is Leighton said almost the exact same thing that I was saying yesterday, or actually, well, I guess back on Wednesday when you and I got together, is that I could see that being the same thing, Leighton, where right now on PSA cards anyway, we have qualifiers on cards that are, something's wrong with the card, and those cards then sell for, say, 2 grade points lower than the non-qualified card would for that grade point. And I think I said the exact same thing, Dave, that
Yeah, pretty
I
much.
can see that.
Pretty much.
They basically are cards with qualifiers. They're just not on the slab. They're now consumer driven qualifiers, and people are becoming more and more sophisticated as time goes by and more content consumed, and people are getting advice, and we're seeing that that's kind of the way it would work. So I was kind of smirking, Leighton, because I'm glad to hear that you and I are on the same page when it comes to that, but it was right down to the level of detail. Okay, well that's great stuff, fellas. Leighton, anything? Did you come with any questions or topics for David and myself here tonight?
Well, David, I'm curious. I've listened to your podcast, and I was curious from someone who's kind of like re-entered the space. There's a lot of talk these days. I mean, there's so many different opinions as far as it doesn't matter what it is. Grading, numbered cards, mistakes that a company might make, whatever the case may be. How do you keep some of that noise at a reasonable level in your head, so that for someone like you who doesn't do this professionally, it still actually is an enjoyable hobby? And I'm sure that there's things wrong or that maybe upset you, but how do you make sure that you continue to look at the bright side of things? And how do you make sure that you consume the content that makes you feel good about the hobby, that you enjoy listening to?
That's a great question. Because I really love listening to different hobby podcasts and YouTubes, and listen if I'm walking the dog or working out. But if I find myself getting agitated and aggravated, or it's just noisy, I'll move away and I'll try to find stuff that's a little bit more collector driven. Or I will actually not listen to any hobby content just until I can sort of get quiet again. One of the things I'm really, really committed to is my own understanding of the actual dictionary definition of what a hobby is, which is something in my leisure time for pleasure. So, I'm not a professional. So if I find myself in my leisure time getting annoyed, that's not what I want. So I try to just kind of avoid it. Because it can be a very noisy hobby, and which is an odd thing, because there's also people out there who must have the most insane collections who have nothing to do with any of this. Who are like, what do you mean it's noisy? It's the quietest hobby in the world. We just don't know who they are.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Leighton, I want to do a couple comments that came in that are directed to you. Justin Bode, a big fan of Leighton, says, good evening, Leighton. Justin, always good to see you here, buddy. Stuke says, Leighton, saw your basketball collection purchase. How often do you get a chance at the George Mikan Bowman rookie card?
Oh, I mean, I could tell you in the last 5 years, I've owned less than 5 of them. And if you really put me to the test, I would tell you I've owned, I'm going to say 3 or 4, and I could probably tell you where they came from. So it's not that easy to get.
There you go, Stu. That is a tough card. That is the basketball grail pretty much right there. So Dave Marone says to you at Just Collect, are you trading on eBay only, or will you reply on your website? I hate fees. I'll just point out to David that you can't, I don't know, Leighton, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can reach out to Leighton on Instagram or Just Collect. Those Instagram handles are on the screen right now on the ticker. But Leighton, please respond to David yourself directly, if you don't mind, just on how you want to move forward.
Sure. So it's a great question. So the first thing is, if you email me, Leighton@justcollect.com, or if you DM me right here on Instagram under Leighton Sheldon or my Just Collect account, and you ask a question about a particular card that we have on eBay, or to be fair, another platform, we'll be happy to reply to you. But one of the things I want to help some collectors right now, because they may not understand why, let's say, a company or a dealer has a certain type of behavior. It's a great question the individual just asked. However, if you ask that question on eBay, I've had even like as of this week, we'll have people ask on eBay, hey, my name on, IG is such and such. Can you do any better offline in person? All these types of things, which you may not realize, but to someone who, I may not love eBay, but I understand the platform and I understand the rules. And so if you ask us being a dealer, it really doesn't matter, collector, etc. If you ask someone via the eBay messaging system to take business off of eBay, you're really putting that person in a difficult position. And I just want to be clear, my company doesn't respond at all. And the reason why we don't respond is because we understand that eBay has bots, etc. They manage things. And so we're hoping that people figure out by us not replying on those types of questions, it's not that we don't want to sell cards. In fact, the opposite. We'd be happy to. However, we want to make sure that we maintain our ability to sell those cards on that particular platform. So just something for collectors to keep in mind, to be careful about the platform in which you're sending the messaging on, or the type of messaging you're sending on that platform.
All right, I think I think you're handling it exactly right, Leighton. And it's good that David got to ask the question here. So thanks for that, David. And Leighton, anything else you'd like to let everybody know before we wrap up the Vintage Spotlight segment here on Saturday, March the 30th, 2024?
Well, I've had the opportunity recently to buy some really amazing collections. And so if you want to see the video, if you want to read the full story, you can always do that on our blog at blog.justcollect.com. You can check out our YouTube channel on YouTube at Just Collect. And I've had folks ask me a lot of times, like, hey, do you sell these cards? Do you take a waiting list, for some of these cards? And so, the reality of it is I don't have like a one size fits all answer. So if you want to talk turkey, if you want to ask me a question, don't be shy. Drop me a line. Like I said, email me, DM me, and I'd be happy to talk to you about some of the cards and the collections that we purchase.
There we go, guys. You can follow Leighton on Instagram at Leighton_Sheldon or just_collect, and listen to his podcast like David does, our guest David does, Trading Card Therapy. You can catch that on wherever you consume your podcast. Leighton, thanks as always for joining the Vintage Spotlight segment, and I'm looking forward to the future when we maybe take it to the next level. So thank you, Leighton, for joining us. I'll let you say goodbye, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Jeremy, for having me. David, it was great seeing you.
Same. Take care.
Take it easy.
Thank you, Leighton. All right. David, before we get back to it, I want to go through a couple of comments that have come in. Bobby Baseball here said, committed completionist, stark individualist, fan of greatness, admirer of teamwork, guardian of history. Via my personal collection, you see me.
Nice.
I love that, Bobby Baseball. What a that's like poetry right there, isn't it, David?
Oh my gosh. Nice.
Very nice. Very great comment there, Bobby Baseball. That's already from about 18 minutes ago. David Marone said 7s are the most underrated grades. I love the new 5 to 7 PSA. I think he loves 5 to 7s. Great vintage grade is what it sounds like. That's good stuff right there. Brendan Ryan says, I'm a fan of the Rated Rabbi's rabbit hole perspectives. And good evening to you, Brendan Ryan. He goes on to say that Dave's voice is so relaxing. I've noticed that too. Justin Bode, I love how you get to know yourself better as you collect. Very insightful. I think so too. And actually, I'm going to change that. Do we get to know ourselves better as we collect, or does collecting enable us to change how we are a little bit and augment ourselves, add another dimension to us as humans? Pretty deep stuff, but that's what this episode. Did you have anything to respond to that comment with, David?
No, it's just so thoughtful. I just love this inner game, and I think the one thing that we haven't talked about yet is like what a great treat it is to have these deep conversations through the vehicle of cards. Right? That's really what it is, like the spirituality to me. We actually have deep conversations of identity and understanding through this medium. And I'll be really honest with you, like it's not always easy for guys to have these kind of conversations. So to be able to go there and not like feel super weird or uncomfortable, I don't know, it's kind of cool.
And I mean, what other hobby, and I don't know, I'm not, this is not a loaded question, but like what other hobby would provide this sort of opportunity for, middle-aged men, and not just middle-aged men, young men, old men, women, of course, as well, because there's often women in the chat here as well. But what other hobby provides this? I'm sure there are others, but nothing that I see myself getting to, whether you're, maybe you're into mountain biking. So, but you're mountain biking. I don't know that you're joining that you're joining live chats to talk about it after. Maybe there's a whole community out there I don't know about, but I love it as well. And you made a comment to me the other day just about like how important it is to have your card buddies and what that means to you. Can you just touch on that? Because I want to hear your thoughts on that, David, because it's been a huge part of my life now, right back from when I was in, grade 4, and me and my best friend would hop on the transit bus with our parents probably panicking, and we'd take the bus downtown and go to the card shop that was in the back corner of the comic store. And we'd spend our afternoons there. And that was my buddy. He's still one of my best buddies.
Course.
He's totally out of cards now and has been for probably 35 years. But as the years have gone by, I love my card buddies. They are my cherished friends. Nothing against my other friends. I love my card buddies. I want to hear from you though about what it all means to you.
Yeah, I'll come at it in 2 ways. The first way is my oldest, bestest buddy, Adam K, was that kid on his bike next to my bike riding to Arthur's Toy Town in Novato to go through the rackbacks and try to find the stars on top showing. So from 8 years old, not 7 years old to now, he's my guy. And then another friend, West Coast Jewish Chris, is a friend who just become a deep Chris. Right. And he just used to be Jewish Chris, but then I did a funeral for this woman and her son's name was Chris and he lived in North Carolina. So Jewish Chris became West Coast Jewish Chris. He lives in San Francisco. And the three of us have a text chain and we share mail days and we also are deep friends. We share things we're going through in our lives. They're the guys I will, to share celebrations, to ask their insight and input on a card. So there's these old, deep friends. And then I have new friends from it, which doesn't happen that often when you get older. So like Matt, 1956 Tops guy, who was recently on my show. We just met through Instagram, and that guy has the most incredible eye. Right? He's really helped me advance as a collector and just to really understand vintage better. He's a friend. He's a trustee. He's like a consigliere. I'll send him a card. What do you think? He actually helped me on my 52 Mays, big time. So yeah, it's a great way to make deepen old relationships and then have real new friendships. And I think maybe the last thing I would add, we're living in such a polarized time where it's really hard sometimes to talk to people because of our differences. And we can have completely opposite views on every single political issue. But if we share cards, we can be friends. And then maybe it can just soften those differences and we can remember there's a human being standing opposite me, not just an opinion. So there's a lot to be said for all of that.
Oh, for sure. I think that's really, really well said. Okay, some more comments here. Leighton's gone, but Dan's Vintage said that I can say from much experience that Leighton is one of the best dealers to deal with. So I wish he was here to hear that, but that's very nice, Dan. Mookie says, I agree with the rabbi. The luxury of being an amateur is that it's easier to opt out of the drama and live in the light. Yeah, he's right. He's so right. Dave, there are days where I'm like, I wish I could just delete my YouTube as a consumer of it. I could delete my Instagram, my Twitter, but I don't. I want to know what's going on, even if I don't like it. I just want to know what's going on. But Mookie is right. I think that's an astute comment, Mookie. Thanks for being here. Mark Santucci says, I asked, what other hobbies do? He says, people who like music and movies. Yes. I can't, of course, right? Wonderful hobbies. I love both. But, and this isn't, I'm just wondering, are there, because sure, there can be live streams talking about these things. That makes a ton of sense to me. But are there events that they go to where they gather in person and there's extracurricular activities. I'm not trying to say our hobby is any better than that one. I'm just trying to draw parallels and see how we stand out and are unique. But great point, Mark. Thanks for pointing those ones out. And JH says, I feel totally comfortable loving a great Griffey refractor from the 90s with my buddies.
Nice.
Good time. Hey, yes, definitely with you. And we have a Facebook user whose name I can't see, says shalom, which is hello in Hebrew to Dave. I think it means several things, not just hello. It means hello, goodbye, and peace, right?
Yeah.
And the professor says, what are some of the polarizing issues that David sees exist in the hobby specifically? Is that something you're willing to touch on, David?
Sure. I mean, I think a lot of the noise is around polarizing issues. I think the one that's always whatever the news is of the week. It seems that right now, card, whether you want to call it restoration or alteration, is pretty polarizing. And like on either sides of the polarity, people are like, oh my God, I really got to tell you, you're altering a card, really? And the other side is like, are you kidding me? There's nothing wrong with this. And they're very strong opinions. I will say my litmus test for that, since we're talking about it, is pretty simple. Would I disclose this were I to sell the card? Would I put it in the eBay description? I will tell you, I have a 1962 Bobby Richardson that I bought, and I took a pair of pantyhose, little piece, and I got the wax off. If I ever sell it, it'll be even that, like, just for my own integrity. Like, would I tell you I used whatever card care? I'm not, no pointing fingers. If I wouldn't, well, why not? To me, I'm not, no judgment. Everyone has to do, it's not what this is. But for me, if I wouldn't disclose that, I would be withholding it, and I would be withholding it for me because I would think there's something I wouldn't feel good about. For me, it'd be wrong. So that's like the litmus test on this one. And I know not everyone feels that way. So that's sort of a polarizing thing in the hobby right now. And yeah.
There you go. All right. No, I think, hey, that's one that we're all aware of. But there, to the professor's question, there you go. Let's move on. Dan's Vintage says, I'm Irish, but my wife is Jewish, and a major part of my PC is Jewish players, full Sandy Koufax PC, full Al Rosen PC, and developing a Hank Greenberg PC. Very nice, Dan. Good luck with the Greenberg. And I'm a fan of Sandy Koufax myself. Not that I really ever saw him play, but I'm certainly a fan of the history of Sandy Koufax. All right, I want to go to this next topic that you and I discussed the other day, and you mentioned to me that you're trying to build a beautiful but small collection.
Yeah,
and I said to you, okay, but what is small? Just like I may define what a GOAT player is one way, and someone else may define what a GOAT player is the other way.
Yeah.
You may define what small is one way, and I may define it the other way. So when you say you're trying to build a beautiful but small collection, can you give us a bit of detail on what you mean by that, and how that's working out?
Yeah. Again, it's acknowledging where I got in, and when I got in. And so a little bit by necessity and a little bit by sort of desire. I want something to be manageable. I do have this thing in the back of my mind that I don't want to be really a burden to my wife. Even though I have West Coast Jewish Chris and Adam K, if something should happen, I have this, I don't want to he's dead and I got to deal with all these tchotchkes. Like, I don't make it easy on her. So in my mind, part of it is I want to have a manageable collection where I can say, listen, just the ones in this case, everything else doesn't really matter. So that's a piece of it, both of it out of respect for her, for when I got into the hobby. And then also it helps me to clarify one thing I've been thinking I actually want to really see if I'm doing this. I have the idea that I want to have 10% of my cards hold 90% of the financial value. And then conversely, I want 90% of my cards to have 10% of the financial value. So it's, not going to be a lot of cards. To do that, I have to really know what I want, so I have to be willing to identify, have to really like pass on a lot of good cards to get a great card, pass on great cards to get a transcendent card, and acknowledge that they're just, I'll never have everything, but I can have a couple of cool ones.
We'll never have everything, and there's always more cards to buy. So when one goes by, one kind of passes you by, you missed it, you forgot about it, don't worry about it. There's always something else.
Yeah.
But sometimes we embark upon a project where we need certain cards, and there may be an unlimited amount of them. But our friend Matthew, the 1956 Topps guy, puts in the chat here. He says, not sure if I've already discussed, but Dave's 1984 All-Star Game set is one of the most interesting set creations I've ever heard of. Conceiving our own checklists is one of the best hobby ideas. And I got to tell you, number one, I want you to talk about your 84 All-Star Game set. It's very cool. You sent me a picture of it. But I love this second part of this comment from Matthew, which is conceiving our own checklists is one of the best hobby ideas. That's how I roll. I want to have the option personally to be beholden to a checklist that I didn't pick the players on it. I want to be able to say, you know what, maybe it's an 80 card checklist, but I only want 25 of them, and I'm not going to feel the need to have to get all these players I don't care about anymore. I love that part of it. But Dave, can you speak to that if you'd like?
Yeah. I would love to.
Tell the audience about your 84 All-Star Game project.
Yeah. So first I want to speak to what you said, then we'll go to the 84 set. So again, learn by doing. I am really not a set collector. I put together a mid-grade raw run of 1950s 49ers as a way to, it's interesting that it's not like baseball. I know all the Niners history during my life, especially from the 80s on, but there's not a lot on the 50s. There's actually only one book about the 49ers before Joe Montana. One book. It's not remembered like baseball. So I wanted to get to know my favorite team. I set about building of this raw run, and it was fun. But you know what? Last night I sold off the team set from 55, and I have a few others up on eBay. And the only one I want to keep is the 52 Bowman Large because it's just gorgeous. So I'm not a set collector. I don't want the volume. It feels like it's like homework. Right, like responsibility. Similarly, I was doing a Willie Mays run, and it started to feel like work. I'm like a responsibility. I got to get the 66. So I paused it. On the other hand, the 84 All-Star Game, my dad took me and my dad took my brother, July 10th, 1984, Candlestick Park. We sat upper deck, just right of center field, like almost out of the stadium. Birds were lower than we were. But I was there, man. I was in the stadium. It was like the center of the world, and I was in the center for that moment. Great memory. Again, coming in, I want to have something that's unique to me. And I got such a hobby key. So I came up with the idea for a master set. It's a PSA graded master set. It has of course, the starting lineups from the AL and the NL and the benches. So there's 60 players, 30 on each of the rosters, NL and AL. There are 10 coaches, so 5 from each team. There are 5 announcers, Al Michaels, Howard Cosell. There's 5 announcers. That gives us 65, 75. And then there are 2 first pitches, Carl Hubble and Stu Miller. 2 honorary captains, Hank Greenberg, and who's the other one? I'm having a senior moment. Who's the NL? Oh, Willie McCovey. So McCovey and Hank Greenberg. So I have 79 cards. All right, a few $100 for the Hank Greenberg, the whatever. And then the bottom of the first inning, the camera pans and catches Joe DiMaggio. It was white swept hair. He's wearing a sport coat. He's wearing a sport coat and a tie with a pale yellow sweater. He's Joe DiMaggio. And all of a sudden this master set, got expensive. But this actually, right here, this was the 80th and final card. This is the 48-49 Leaf DiMaggio. and I finished the master set with this. So 80 cards in the master set, and then I've built around it. For example, Huey Lewis in the news sang the national anthem. I have an 85 lenticular Slurpee disc, and a bunch of other things. Certain players get mentioned during the broadcast. I've picked up their cards, and it's a one of one checklist. It's a lot of fun.
Really cool. Really cool. Well, that's awesome. And you sent me a picture of it. It looked really, really nice. Put up that DiMaggio though. I want to use I want to use the spotlight feature here so people can see. There we go. There's the spotlight on it. People can also get a bit of a better look at some of the cards behind you.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful 1.5. I think I saw it.
1.5. Yeah.
Looks very nice for a 1.5 there.
Yeah. It has a little, if you hold it at a certain angle, you can see it has a little crease. And then the bottom corner has a crease, but really nice registration. There's none of that ink smear from the card that would have been on top of it. It's just a very, very nice example, and a great example of buying cards, not grades.
Right on.
Yeah.
Very cool. Matthew jumps in here and says, is there anything more personal than creating a set like that? I honestly can't think of one. So mentally exciting and gets at the essence of the hobby experience. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go here. Let's just pick a topic. One of the topics that I wanted to discuss with you that I know you find interesting is this. We're totally changing topics here, everybody.
Fine. Go for it.
Can a card from a traded set be a rookie card?
No.
Does a card need to be pack pulled to be a rookie card? So this was your topic.
It is.
Provide some more context for everybody.
Is.
And
It is.
What are your
well, Jeremy, we all have to find things we take stands on in life, and the hills we're willing to die on. And absolutely, a rookie card can only be pack pulled. You can't buy it in a traded set, because then I could just go to the store and I know I'm getting that card. And I know in 50 years, maybe no one will remember, but I would know. It has to be pack pulled to me. And what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that was probably one of the original, criteria for what a rookie card is, laid out by, I believe, Beckett magazine, back in the 80s at some point. And then I think about certain baseball cards in particular from the 80s that are maybe an extended set. Like the Topps traded sets are really just extended sets, or they're supplements to the set. So while they didn't come out in wax packs, they're still from the same creators, the same company. They're still produced the same way. They're just packaged and distributed differently. And to me, for that reason, and like you said, down the road, I don't think people care more about what plastic holder they're in now than they care about how they came out of the pack, 40, 50, 60 years ago. So personally, I don't adhere to that.
Okay.
But that's the other reason why I think that any debate that we are having, whether it's about, a recent debate that I was involved in, what is a GOAT, who is a GOAT, versus what is a rookie card, what isn't, versus what is vintage, what isn't. There's never going to be a final answer. There is no right or wrong. There is no it's this or it's that. That's a hill that I will die on, is that there's not going to be consensus, because I'm entitled as a collector and hobbyist to say, well, you know what, my Cal Ripken Jr. Topps traded is a rookie card, and then you look at Tiffany sets, Topps Tiffany, they only came in factory sets.
Right.
But I mean, the hobby generally considers those to be rookie cards. Nobody cares that they didn't come in. I shouldn't say nobody cares. You care, and people like you care. So I take that back. But fewer and fewer people, I think, are caring, or even care how they were packaged back in the 80s. Someone who just came in the hobby for the first time in 2021, do they really care how cards came out way back when? I don't know. Maybe they do. Maybe they respect that history. I certainly respect the history, but I'm also all for change. I'm all for evolution and adapting. Bobby Burrell says right here, David's right, pack pulled. Well, I disagree. I think David's. I think what Bobby should say is, I agree with David.
Fair.
Pack pulled, but not that David is right, because there is no right or wrong here. There's what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? I think that's just the kind of the the way it goes right now. Brendan Ryan says, answer as if Victor is watching. He's referring to my friend Victor, the rookie card specialist, who's really taken the whole rookie thing as seriously and developing his working document and all that. Mark Santucci says, absolutely traded cards. The first card in the set can be a rookie, like the 86 traded Bo Jackson. Mookie, we're finally getting to Dave's commandments. Is a Tiffany card disqualified as a rookie card? What do you think of it? What do you think? So factory set Tiffany Mookie wants to know.
Well, I'm a very progressive rabbi. I'm not an orthodox rabbi, so I can't say that there is a correct belief, but I do feel strongly that the truest rookie is that pack pulled base rookie 1985 Topps Dwight Gooden. Oh man, I remember chasing that card, right? And to me, I would rather have that one for me than the 84 traded or any Tiffany.
Yeah, and I love that you have that position. I love that you have a position at all.
Sure,
and that you care enough to talk about it.
Sure.
And that's the beauty of this, is that we don't all have to go
the
same way on it, right? Todd McDonald, welcome to the show, says great backdrop.
Ooh.
Dave, I love
Thank
this
you.
next comment from Sean Red. He says, think of a factory set as one huge jumbo pack.
Nice.
Maybe. Wild K card says, traded, never felt like real rookies to me. Yeah, fair. And Stu says, do vending machines prior to gum packs count as pack pulled? And then the question, David, is, some cards that were vending cases there's a real conundrum there, because vending case cards are the same as pack pulled cards in most cases. But they didn't come out of a pack; they came out of a vending machine. So how do you reconcile that?
I saw Stu's question and I thought, oh, great one. Okay, so I have to say, in my own experience, I never knew. I knew of vending cases, vending boxes. I knew about those, but I never encountered a card vending machine that had tops. Although I can still remember my mom saying no. Remember those old Prism Jewels with that great Jordan mid 80s? I can totally remember being at Kmart and my mom saying no, and I know it was like 50 cents. Like, Mom, I could have bought a car with that. But that's a great question. I'm going to say yes. Vending rookies, I'm going to say yes.
Because it's just more production of the same cards that went into packs, but it's that they maybe ran out of packs that year. So they just did. No, I think they did it for people to make complete sets, so people can just go in and buy the sets. Now, the people that own those sets, that bought them from the card shop, who made sets out of the vending case, they may not. There's no way that they know that those didn't come out of a pack and they came out. So I think that's why you have to say yes, because they are fungible. I think is the word.
Yeah.
Drawing the one benefit I got from the whole NFT phase was understanding what the word fungible means. So thank you very much for that era of time. So okay, I think we've agreed that there's differing opinions on whether or not a card that comes out of that doesn't come out of a pack can be considered a rookie card. And I'm always gonna kind of stand for evolution and moving forward with things and all that. So
nice.
Okay. Again, we're not going to get any consensus there, but it's a fun discussion for people to think about. Anything else you want to say about that before we go on to the next one?
Brendan Ryan has a great comment that just blew my mind wide open. By my thinking of what we've been talking about, he's right. For me, I never thought about this before. It's a great comment.
I don't know much about how those prisms were distributed outside of from a vending machine, but there are other criteria that I don't know that they met to become what people, the criteria people consider to be working. Do they meet all the other criteria in Victor's document? I wonder. I don't know enough about them, but except that they sure are fun.
Those are super fun. Last year at the National, I picked up a couple of non-sports from a guy on the first day, and when I came back the next day, someone had bought everything out.
Was he way in the back, the new back? I was there before you were, and I was looking at those, and I was thinking, wow, this guy's got some cool pieces.
I just never saw anything like him. Yeah.
Bruce Springsteen and Rocky from Rocky IV. Prism dual stickers.
Those are great. Yeah.
Those are awesome.
Yeah.
Those are awesome. Yeah, thanks for showing those.
Sure.
Those are just beautiful. And they do look like those are original Prism Jewel stickers. All right. The next topic that you found interesting was, where does vintage cut off? And, I love talking about this because I've got my thoughts, and it's going to be similar. My thoughts are sort of similar to the whole, traded rookie card issue. But let's talk about where does vintage cut off, and what are your thoughts on where it does?
Yeah, I would say first that we probably need some more like subdividers. I think to argue about, because right now we only have one. For me, it's a kind of a pretty standard thing. So when Fleer and Donruss began production, is everything from 81 on is no longer vintage, but 1984 happened 40 years ago. So how is that not vintage? But for me, it's always when it went from 1 to 3, because baseball was my first. What about you?
Yeah. Well, for me, I understand why, and I hear that a lot for baseball collectors at kind of the end of the 70s or the beginning of the 80s, or 81, 82, whenever Fleer and Donruss came in. And then I think, well, for basketball, Fleer didn't come in until 86, so it doesn't apply to basketball. For football, it doesn't apply until Fleer came in, 1990, I believe, something like that.
That's
and
true.
In hockey, we didn't have Fleer until 1992, maybe, I think it was. Okay. And Donruss, I don't even know when Donruss came in hockey. So, I think, first of all, like you said, we need other subdividers. I think we also need to divide. I don't think it's the same by sport, unless you buy into how I look at it. Because how I look at it, the timing, the event that happened, or the change that happened, applied to all sports, almost all sports, within 1 year, really. And that was the advent of Upper Deck, because what did Upper Deck do is they took out the gum, they changed the card stock, they added the hologram, they changed the packaging that the cards were in, and they really upped the game. And plus, here we're in 2024, so that's already 35 years ago. So to me, in hockey and basketball and football, nothing changed in 1980 or 81. I don't think anything really substantial changed there. So, but I understand the thought that it's 1980 or thereabouts. Some people say it's 1970 or something like that, which I think
72.
That's a little more. Pardon?
Yeah, that's what Dan said right here, because that's the last 72. Yeah.
Yeah. To me, that's just kind of ridiculous. Nothing against Dan. I've heard that argument before, but first of all, he says the paper and the quality cards gets worse. So that's the opposite direction of advancement and evolution. So that would be factors other than the world moving forward. That would be cost savings or poor photographers use. So to me, that nothing changed, though. The stock's basically the same. The cards came out of the same type of packs, out of the same type of boxes, with the same kind of gum, distributed the same way. Nothing really changed in 1972 to me across really any of the sports. I respect what Dan is saying, but to me that just doesn't fly personally. And then you get 1980 again. I don't see really anything changing except that 2 new companies came in, but again, they didn't change the way the business worked or the way the cards were produced. Upper Deck is the one that really took it to the next level. So for me, if I pull out a card from 1988 and put it beside a card from 1968, those cards are basically look and feel the same. They came out of the same wax paper with the same gum.
Yeah.
So and they were distributed the same way. So that's why for me, especially with hockey being my primary sport, 1989 or 1989 when Upper Deck came out with baseball, 90 with hockey and football and basketball in 91. I mean, that's when it really changed to me.
Yeah.
And I had a shop back in those days. I was a hardcore collector. I was right in the thick of it. So to me, that's when it all changes. But I agree with you, David. I think that we need more eras to be named and labeled so that we can better communicate, because vintage means different things to different people.
Yeah. Can I ask a question on the other end? How far back do we go on ultra modern? Like today and going back, I never know, when does modern and ultra modern begin?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but I would think that ultra modern to me has got to be the last 1 to 2 years, because ultra means ultra, like,
like
so
super.
to me, it's the last 1 to 2 years. I don't know if there is a set time, a set year where it starts with like the Lucas or the Zions or, whatever sport you want to talk about.
Okay.
So I'm not really sure what I use the term, but to me, the term means like the last couple
Like
rookie classes,
right
the
now.
last couple years of cards.
Yeah,
Does
that makes
make
sense.
sense to you?
Yeah. I'm just trying to think about like, I love Obsidian. Obsidian football. We always I just love black cards. I think they're so beautiful. I have an insert set that I've been collecting from 2020, and the new one just came out, and so those singles are just flooding the market right now. And I'm wondering, it probably is about what you said, a 1 to 2 years.
Yeah. K Card says, so 1988 Topps is vintage. Well, to me, it is. Like, to me, 88 is vintage. I mean, it wasn't vintage in 95. It probably wasn't even vintage in 2005. But here we are in 2025, 2024. It's almost 40 years ago. So to me, 88 Topps, because when I say vintage, I also mean 1950s and 60s and 70s. So 80s, the cards are the same. Nothing. So to me, to K Card, yes. But listen, I don't take any offense if you don't agree with that. I don't care if anybody agrees with me on that. That's just how I consider when I'm looking at it. That's how I consider it. Sean Red says modern era ends when nobody from that set is in the league anymore. That's an interesting way to look at it. I actually like that as something to think about. I want to think about that more. I do like that. JH says clothing is vintage at 20 years. I mean, Brendan Ryan, someone told me 20 years old is technically vintage. Technically, are we? Yeah, but we're the hobby, right? We are the hobby. We do things differently here in the hobby. So Dan says, I feel like it's a rite of passage to have your comment called ridiculous by Jeremy. And Dan, to me, again, I don't, like I said, I respect the opinion, but when I think about it for how I remember the hobby and, being immersed in it really since 1980, to me, nothing really changed, and the cards didn't change. So that's just the way I look at it. That's why to me, it seems ridiculous, but I still respect it. And I still respect you for having the position. So please don't take that the wrong way. Robert Scott says the end of wax and gum was the end of vintage for me. Me too. That was a major change in how the cards were produced and distributed. So for me, I'm with you on that, Robert Scott. That fits for me then. And K Card says, does anyone want to buy my vintage? Then my collection just tripled. Well, no, not all vintage is worth the same, because you could have a bunch of lame, I'm going to swear for a very rare, lame ass commons from 1964 Topps baseball. Nobody wants those either. So those didn't triple in value either. I'm just saying vintage doesn't automatically mean valuable. That's for sure. Pa Boozle is congratulating you, Dan. There we go. Very, very nice. So, it's always an interesting topic, and I've had it before on here. So people, if you follow my content, you know how I feel about it. But again, I'm not trying to, I really don't need to convince anybody. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Hodges says 1957 Topps, the first year of the standard sized cards, the cards changed. Yeah. So I do think that's a great point. And in my opinion, David and Hodges, that's why we need additional delineation of eras and segments of time, because there are other key things that change. So I do love that comment, Hodges, and I think that there is so I'm just looking at Dan's vintage next comment. He says it's a rite of passage to be congratulated in the chat by Bob Boozle. Bob Boozle is a legend. Let's face it. And the sports card professor, active discussion on uber modern cards in baseball, whether collectors will value rookie RPAs that are just coming out, unlike in hockey. Very active discussion. And JH says, my Sergei Fedorov Young Guns rookie card vintage. No, Jay, that's the first year post vintage in my mind. First year post vintage, but also vintage loosely represents the time era. It also, to me, represents the type of card. So that's just the way I use it. we definitely don't all have to agree. It's all good. We can still all be friends. That's for sure. Okay, David, I wanted to now, I have a topic here that we talked about. The first sentence I have is restraints versus constraints in the hobby. Now, I'm just going to bring up the context, but you went on to say a restraint is holding back or controlling ourselves as collectors. Sometimes it's important. On the other hand, a constraint refers to limitation or restriction and can be rewarding because it helps us focus. So I just wanted to lay the context and remind you of the discussion, but can you please take it from there and expand upon what you were thinking and maybe give an example or two of what this means?
Yeah. So, restraint is what it sounds like, right? It's restricting, it's holding back. It's actually not particularly fun, right? I mean, I guess at some point there's that satisfaction of really, really determined self-discipline that is absolutely rewarding, but it also is smothering, right? It's a freedom from, it's like a negative freedom. It's very tight. Versus a constraint is something that we create, their boundaries in our collecting that can be very liberating. Matt, 956 Tops guy, and I were messaging about this, and he actually we were going back and forth because we forgot to talk about this. And I said, do you mean restraint? He said, no, I mean constraints. So there are these things with these boundaries we put around our collections that make it much easier to say yes. And much easier also to say no. So I'll give you an example. I've sort of been just toying with collecting sort of a history of the Giants, my favorite baseball team. There's a Hall of Famer, early 20th century, named Ironman Joe McGinnity, pitcher. He has a 1908 a caramel, right? But he also has, he's in the T206 set. However, he's past the Giants. He's playing minor league baseball. His jersey says Newark. So if I'm creating a constraint in my collection, a constraint might be, no, he's actually not in a Giant uniform. So I'm liberated from buying that card, and it just helps me to discern, right? So it's not the constraint, not the restraint holding back, which is really exhausting, and I end up losing. It's more about shaping what I'm collecting. Is like, building a path in the hobby.
Yeah, so I really do that really does resonate with me. I wasn't sure exactly what you meant by that, but now I do. And it, just to give an example of how that applies to myself is I say to myself, I'm not going to collect, I don't care who the player is, how much I want to collect their cards. If there's a sticker autograph on that card, I'm just not going to, I'm going to put it, that's a constraint. That's a restraint? Which is it, a restraint or a constraint?
Say it one more time.
I'm just
not buying a sticker. Oh, that's a constraint. You don't even want it, right? Yeah, you're not holding back. You're like, that's a constraint. No, thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
I've set that constraint, and it functions a few ways for me. Number one, it lets me just take the money I would have spent on that card and put it into a different card. It keeps my collection a little bit more condensed. Yeah. But really, it's about not being a slave to every card that comes out of a player that I collect, or a set, or whatever it might be. So that's I think that is a constraint, where a restraint is where we are just saying no, even though we want it. We're going to save up for something a little bit better, or a little something that we want more down the road. Okay. I just wanted to put that one out there. Owl Fireball Jeremy said that gum stopped after 1991. That's a great point, because that to me is a key point in time. And just going back to that vintage discussion, Dave, when I now if someone, or if we were to create a framework for the eras, the vintage, modern, ultra modern, and whatever else might come out of it, I can actually see it being like, you take a visual that has the span over the years, so you've got the bars that are covering certain years. So, you got like pre-war over here, maybe you got vintage over here, you got modern here, ultra modern. But the key is that I don't think that one's going to end and the other is going to start. I think you're going to have overlap. And Jeremy, Foul Fireball's name is also Jeremy, where he says gum stopped after 1991. So So I could see that, there could be overlap between, the way I look at it, between vintage and modern from 1989 to 1991, let's say. And I think
That'd be cool.
I think that's an interesting and maybe even an important way to look at these, is that there isn't maybe 1 year where everything changes.
Yeah. I like that.
Yankees fan said, inspiring conversation tonight by all. Dave is soothing to listen to, and Bobby Baseball's comment was great as well. Yes, it was. JH says, best guest ever. Well, that's high praise, David. Very high praise. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, peeps. Yeah, who's on first? Exactly. Dan Vintage says, 2 major constraints: playing days only for vintage, and no players who were bad people, like Pete Rose, Dixie Walker.
That's
Thank
cool.
you to Dan for sharing the constraints. And to be honest, I don't mean this, I don't really care what your constraints are. I think it's important that you have them. Otherwise, you're going to want to buy everything.
Yeah.
And you're going to lose control of your collection. You're not going to know what to do. And then you're going to find yourself being probably overwhelmed, unsatisfied by the hobby.
Yeah.
Unless you're a hoarder, in which case, there's no holds barred at that point, right? But
that's right. Your descendants will be calling Leighton Sheldon someday.
Right, exactly. But I think Dan's comment is right on there for sure. Stuke says, there are loopholes in my constraints if the price is too cheap to pass on. Except, again, we have to let ourselves do what we want to do when we want to do it, right?
Totally.
Don't be a slave to the card company's checklist, but also don't cripple yourself by not being able to buy a card you want. If it fits out, you have to be able to allow for an exception.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. I picked up this incredible card a couple of weeks ago. It's a 1924 Ogden's. It's a Great Men, so tobacco set out of the UK. This is a card of the Prophet Muhammad.
Oh.
Right? Not on my radar. And there are some interpretations of Islam under which this card actually could get me killed. This is a physical depiction of the Prophet. Never heard of this card before. When I saw it, I'm like, of course, absolutely. This is whatever my constraints are. This includes this card. So cool. If we're so disciplined, like, this is never supposed to feel like work to me. We should have some fun. Life is hard.
Exactly. So I just have to show, because I keep my scans of my cards very handy to me. But 1924 Ogden's, I have a small
great set. Yeah.
So I've got there's the Columbus.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, nice. The Lincoln.
The Lincoln, and I also have the
Shakespeare. Oh, good for you. It's a really nice set. That's awesome.
Oh. And then just to go one more over is my Charlie Chaplin, my 1930 J. Milhoff, which is
I'd love to get Chaplin. That is awesome.
I gotta just make myself bigger to show
please.
people the 1930
Little
Charlie
Tramp.
Chaplin. Yeah, from In the Public Eye. He's
wow.
got the mustache going. Yeah, really.
That's beautiful.
Fun stuff.
I'd love to get a Houdini card. He only has a couple.
Yeah. It's on my radar as well.
Nice.
Bobby Burrell, great point. Rarity rule. Sometimes you don't get a second chance to buy certain cards that might, fall outside your constraints. And Joe Perot, a great comment here. I have constraints, but I have a hard time restraining myself in some. I think everybody
man.
raised their hand to that one for sure. So that's JH's best card I've seen on this channel, and I believe he is talking about the one that you just showed. Todd McDonald loves the Chaplin.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Todd McDonald. Okay, let's now go. I got to just share with the audience here. I had more notes for this episode than I think any episode I've ever had. And it's because David was just so communicative with me. And we, as my audience mostly knows, I'll meet with my guest during the week leading up for, anywhere from 15 minutes to 2 hours. It just depends how much talking we end up doing. And we could have kept on going, I believe. But so my notes are quite large. There's quite a bit here, and I can't even read them all while I'm trying to host the show. So let's let's talk a bit about your podcast. I want to make sure we do this.
Yeah,
I want to make
please.
sure we talk about the Rated Rabbi Sports Card Podcast and YouTube channel. So let's do that now. Good idea, Jeremy. Thank you. All right, here we go.
Great.
Why did you start this? Why did you start it?
I started it. It was born out of the creation of the master set from the '84 All-Star Game, and I was just having so much fun with nostalgia, remembering the time, and I just had a moment of inspiration. Watched the broadcast from ABC, and it really quickly became so much more than just the game. It became everything around the game, all the commercials, you know, the spots for TV shows that were coming on the next night. It just became a time capsule, July 1984. And what's incredible is developmentally, my brain, I was 13 years old. So my brain, I have, it's in like a bottomless pit of long-term memory in this very specific time. So the podcast has become just a way for me to, you know, squeeze in this little tiny crevice and then it opens up into a giant cave. And I find myself doing deep dives and into things like The Fall Guy starring Lee Majors, which led me to Heather Thomas in that pink bikini in the hot tub in the poster, which led me to, and she was in that movie called Zapped, starring Scott Baio, which led me to this whole genre of 1980s teen sex comedies. And that's an episode. So I've done 65 episodes, Jeremy, and I'm just entering the bottom of the sixth inning.
I can't believe you did. Heather Thomas. You talk about having a crush in the.
Oh my gosh!
And The Fall Guy with Lee Majors.
Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh, we are from the same era, my friend. That's hilarious. What great memories there. So if you were to, if someone were to ask you, well, why don't I just ask you right now?
Yeah.
What are you trying to accomplish? Like I asked you, why did you start? But what is your goal? What are you trying to accomplish with it? What do you want to? What kind of mark do you want to leave?
Yeah, I love telling stories. I love telling, nothing better than sitting around telling stories. So for me, it's this incredible escape. It's this whole other part of me that I don't get to necessarily express ever on the pulpit. That's a different experience. I mean, I'm in front of people speaking all the time. It's a weird existence where people all of a sudden will just turn to you and ask you, well, what do you think, Rabbi? Which my rabbi actually gave me good advice. He said, you can just shrug your shoulders. Just because they ask you your opinion, you don't have to have one. So I do a lot of that in my day job. And this other part of me is just this inner journey exploration, having fun, being silly, laughing at myself, laughing at life, surrounding it with baseball cards. So part of my constraint includes, I buy really wonderful cards for the show. And I get to have mail days for, $1 card, $5 card. So I get to bring them in and weave them into the episodes. So that's what I'm just trying to accomplish. I'm having a great time. I really love that what I've done is evergreen. There are moments something will be happening when the 49ers lost the Super Bowl again. I was in mourning and I talked about the stages of grief. So some parts are a little timely, but mostly I think it's not about any particular moment today and more about a moment back then that just shapes me.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's important to make, when you're doing content, it's important that you enjoy the content that you're making.
Gosh,
and you find it. If you don't, I think, and I'm so lucky in what I do, because all I get to do is meet people. That's it. Cool. I'm just meeting you, spending 3 hours during the week with somebody, and like just how lucky am I really to be able to meet so many people, right? Bob Hosta made a comment, says, collecting is a spiritual practice. This resonates with me so much. I think that's a great comment. Bob, thank you for being here. Welcome to the show. But Dave, a couple of your favorite episodes or topics that you've covered outside of Heather Thomas, because that's all that I can think, bikini. That's all I can remember. What else is, what are some of your favorite episodes that you've done, topics you've covered because we're hopefully some of this audience is going to now seek out your podcast. Where should
Yeah.
they start? What are
Oh
some
my
of your,
gosh.
because if they're your
Yeah.
favorites, they're probably going to be our favorites.
Oh, that's great. I tell the story about when the camera pans onto DiMaggio. I think the episode is called "And Joe DiMaggio," and it is. I tell the story of the camera panning on DiMaggio, and there is this young man sitting next to him. The camera's on DiMaggio, he sees the camera on him. He starts waving and going crazy and getting excited. So I imagine what it must have been like. It's like they're going down to their seats. Oh my God, man, these are great seats. Are we really sitting this close? We keep getting closer and closer and closer. Oh my God, look how close to the All-Star game is. Unbelievable. The fifth row. Oh my God. And they start getting into their seats and moving over down the aisle like, yo, man, that's Joe DiMaggio. No, that's not Joe DiMaggio. No, listen, we're in the fifth row. It's Joe DiMaggio. So that just cracked me up still. Like, could you imagine going to the All-Star game and sit next to DiMaggio? I mean, amazing. Another one is called, what's it called? It's called Cocaine, Heart Attacks, and the Pittsburgh Pirates. And it is about, Jeremy, there were a lot of trends in the 1980s, including there were a lot of drugs in the 1980s and in baseball and all sports. So I talk about the Pittsburgh drug trials, how there all these players who were in the All-Star game whose careers, intersect with the drug trials, including the Pittsburgh Pirate. So the Pittsburgh Pirate is coked out of his mind, running around in the costume, selling drugs to athletes, and interwoven, it's true. And it just so happens that there were 4 different heart attacks who one of them was one of the players in the drug trial, this guy, Rod Scurry. The other ones were umpires. So this episode that has cocaine, heart attacks in the Pittsburgh Parrot. Get Quiet was a recent one that I really loved. Actually, I really liked this last week's episode. And then the last one I would say is I started a couple months ago doing special episodes that are called Season Team, Boombox, and Screen. And I invite guests on to talk about a particular team and a season in the 1980s. And then something from pop culture. So music, something with a screen, TV, movie, whatever. So I have my brother on for the first episode, my brother, the Shark, and he did the 1988 49ers. And then I had Matthew, 1956 Topps guy. That was incredible. He did the 1989 Cubs, which is amazing. Talk about that Kurosawa film, Rashomon, where different perspectives, different experiences. For him, the LCS in '89 is a heartbreak because the Giants beat the Cubs. For me, it's incredible. Will Clark destroys the Cubs single-handedly. So that was a great one with Matthew. That's a 3-parter, and I got to tell you, Jeremy, the first time I knew of Matthew was on your show. I was in Tel Aviv walking on the Tayel at the boardwalk on the beach, and he was on your show telling the story of the 52 mantle.
So you're listening to that episode in Israel.
In Tel Aviv in Israel. I'm walking. It's a beautiful sunny day, and I'm listening to the show, listening to you guys. It was an unbelievable experience. And so I got him actually to tell the story again on my show just a few weeks ago. And then tomorrow I'm going to record the latest installation of Season Team, Boombox, and Screen. My friend Rabbi Seth Limmer is actually going to be here in studio with me, and he's going to do the 1986 New York Football Giants, which is that's his team. So we're going to relive that. So every month, and then a month after that, Iowa Dave's coming on, and he's going to do the 85 Cardinals, and more to come. So it's a little bit of everything.
That's cool. You mentioned Will Clark, and I remember very clearly in the late 80s, maybe it was even the early 90s, just how popular Will Clark was in the hobby. Like his Fleer rookie was the one with the blue border around it, I think.
Yeah.
I might be
87 Fleer. Yeah, 87 Fleer. That's right. Yeah.
87 Fleer.
Yeah. Pack pull.
That was a big card back then.
Huge.
Shouldn't he get some hobby love? What happened?
Injuries. He got injured, got traded. He and Barry Bonds really didn't get along. Really didn't get along.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so he ends up bouncing around Baltimore and Texas first. Super, super beloved in San Francisco, very collectible. I remember, Jeremy, going to a TriStar show in '89 at the Moscone Center, and there were stacks of that '87 Fleer Will Clark, and dealers $20 a pop. We just couldn't sell them fast enough. All right, now that card probably costs like $2.
Yeah. $2, but I don't want to pay shipping. Yeah, exactly. Junk Wax Museum says, great guest. Thank you, Junk Wax Museum. Bob Hosta says, loved your Get Quiet episode, David. Probably my favorite episode of the Rated Rabbi Sports Card podcast so far. Mark Santucci says, how about the 82 Brewers and Iron Maiden, their album, Number of the Beast? I remember that album. Mark Santucci.
Yeah, wow. Mark, we're going to do the 82 Brewers. My buddy Adam K, my oldest car buddy, is coming on in May and do the 82 Brew Crew. Yes.
Yeah, right on. There you go, Santucci. All right. Okay. There's one other, this is a bonus topic, I'm feeling like, David. So,
all right.
Again, and I want to let the audience understand how this all came through. So, usually, as I've explained, I'll meet with my guests to just build some rapport so that I'm not meeting them for the first time a minute before we go live. And so in this instance, I also said today, I also say to my guests, if you think of anything else between now and Saturday, just send me an email. I'll work it into the show notes. So he sent me. David took that to heart, and he sent me a nice email. And on it, he had what he dubbed as, finally, this was the last thing in the email, is finally 4 additions to hobby nomenclature. And this is fun. This is fun stuff. So, Dave, I'm going to leave it to you to just, I think you gave me, you had 4 of them, 4 things that, whether it's going to work its way in or not, or under a different name perhaps. But Dave, take it away, because I think these are all things that we all experience, and it would be nice to put a label to them. So, take it away.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Jeremy. So, the first one was featured in a recent episode. Actually, it was a special episode. It's it's actually an eponymously named episode. It's called a Deborah Winger Mail Day. You have to be of a certain age to remember the film Officer and a Gentleman, but I remember it. Jeremy, you remember a little bit. I think some of our audience remembers Officer and a Gentleman. And at the end of the film, right, Richard Gere's character comes into the factory. He's got these crisp navy whites. He's strutting. Everyone's, who's this guy? And it's this like economically depressed, Midwestern kind of rural Rusty Belt factory. And if you remember, Deborah Winger and her girlfriend, they're trying to meet a Navy person an officer so they can get out of this really rough life in the factory. And he comes strutting in, and he comes up behind her, Deborah Winger, and starts kissing her on the neck, and then sweeps her up in his arms. And there's that Joe Cocker, Jennifer Warren's, love lift us up where we belong. So a Deborah Winger Mail Day is that feeling. It can't happen very often. If you get 1 or 2 a year where you come home and like the box is waiting for you, and that's Richard Gere, man, and you just take it, and it just, you hear the music in your head, and it's just like, feet aren't touching the earth anymore. You're swept away. It's transcendent. You just get it. I had one recently, and I hadn't had one since last September. I had one a couple of weeks ago I bought a card from Ashish. The first time I actually ever bought a card from him. Great reputation. I was very happy to finally do a deal with him. I got a 1915 Cracker Jack John McGraw in a SGC3. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous card, beautifully centered, really deep red, awesome resolution in the face. Sometimes this one can be kind of blotchy in his face, but really, really clear. There's caramel stains, but they're sort of concealed in the red and a little bit in the uniform. I just think this is such an incredible card. So it's a Deborah Winger Mail Day when you get a card like this, and it can't happen that often, right? Because if I get a card like this frequently, I wouldn't feel very much, right? It can only happen on occasion. This was one, and so the second one, a Deborah Winger Mail Day. What's that?
I love it. and And before you go next, I just have to do two things here.
Yeah.
First of all, Mookie Chilson says, sing it with him, Jeremy. I'm like, no, Mookie, I do not want to break the internet today or this YouTube machine, so I'm not going to sing it with him. Sorry, David, please.
No, these are fun. I'm reading the quotes. It's for the comments. It's funny. So when you have a Deborah Winger mail day, not only on Deborah Winger mail days, but on Deborah Winger mail days for sure, that card becomes a nightstand card. And a nightstand card is just what it sounds like, a card that you bring to bed with you. You can't bear to put it away in your PC. You can't leave it out anywhere. You need to take it to bed with you. Instead of reading that book for a page before you fall asleep, you just stare at the card, right? It's like the last thing you look at. You take it in, you read the back again. You go, oh my God, I've been looking at this card online for so long. I've seen this card in showcases forever. And now, like, yeah, I know we're just custodians of the cardboard, but for now, this is mine. And I just look at it, right? And put it on my nightstand, give my wife a little kiss goodnight, then look at it one more time. Good night. I love you. Turn off the light. First thing in the morning, I go right back to the card, snatch it up, bring it in the kitchen. I'm looking at it again, even before coffee. It's a nightstand card.
Yeah,
man.
So I think that's so funny. And so, okay, I just want to speak to Deborah Winger.
Yes.
So for people who might not know who Deborah Winger is, I'd like to propose an alternative name.
Okay.
And that would be the Travis Kelce Mail Day, because I think Taylor Swift swept him off his feet, and and so I think that would work too.
That'll work.
Yeah. But
That's awesome.
I do listen. I think that you're onto something here, because the Deborah Winger Travis Kelce Mail Day is something that, like, we all. Well, I don't say we all, but I know I have mail days coming, throughout whatever. They come in spurts, they come in cycles. Sometimes they come nonstop, and they all don't feel the same. If it's a card from a set that I'm collecting, but it's it's just card number 140 out of 150, and it's not a player that I love. Maybe in a case where I did respect the card company checklist, it's not going to sweep me off my feet. But like you said, these are the specialist of special mail days.
Yeah.
And when you've been pursuing a card for years and you finally get it, I mean, this is the one that you are. It's all you're thinking about until it lands.
Yeah.
You're checking that tracking 5 times a day to see if there's any movement. And when it finally comes, that's your Deborah Winger mail day.
Oh,
it
so
comes
good.
to bed with you. It sits on your nightstand. I do this myself, man. I'll take cards into the bedroom and put them on my bedside and just look at them before I go to bed. I want to make sure that I look at them again. Okay, so that's 2 of the 4.
Yeah.
You've got 2 more. Let's go to the next
2
one.
more. All right. Yeah. So the third one, I call a marshmallow card. And it's based on that. I think it was a Stanford psychology test of children where they say you can have 1 marshmallow now or 2 marshmallows if you wait until tomorrow. So a marshmallow card is that card where I'm impulsive, or I'm impatient, and I make a move on a card because I want the experience of buying. I want it. It's just a card that I'm not excited. Like, I know it's coming, and I'm already kind of like, I'm like trying to talk myself into it a little bit more. It's that off-center card bought at 10:38 on a Sunday night without my glasses on my phone in the kitchen, but I'm not excited. I know it's gonna come, but I'm not following the tracking. I don't rush to open it. I look at it, I put it down, it ends up getting in the darkness, lost into my PC. I'm already thinking about, how am I going to get rid of this? What kind of haircut am I willing to take on it? One of the things I've developed for myself is having that outlet of really low end stuff, right? Like 1985 Fleer Superstar specials for $1 and shipping kind of things. So I can, cause I'm not a monk. I want to buy cards. So I have fewer marshmallow days when I have those little really low end outlets. So that's a marshmallow card.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
mean, if I'm trying to think. So what? I think we all have these cards where we buy them and we kind of regret.
Yeah.
Oh, I think it happens to me sometimes, Dave, with
Uh,
modern cards where I see pictures of them online, but I haven't held one in hand, and maybe the player I like is featured, so I'll buy the card. It'll land, and I'll see. This isn't really what I was expecting.
yeah.
That's one example. And
Yeah.
even I think a more interesting example, at least for me, was I don't know if you're familiar with hockey you are, but 1953 Parkhurst,
Okay.
beautiful set of cards, like
Okay.
stunning artwork in this set. Jean Beliveau, I think I mentioned him earlier in
Yeah.
the show.
Yeah.
One of the classiest men to ever play professional sports. His rookie card is in that set, and I bought a raw copy of that card in probably, I don't know, 98, 99. I graded it myself with PSA several in like 2008. It came back a PSA 5, and I kept the card. And then a few years later, I had the opportunity to buy a PSA 7 Jean Beliveau to upgrade my 5. So I bought the card, and now I own 2 copies.
Yeah.
But when the card came, I didn't like it as much as I liked the 5. The 7 is clearly in better condition, but the 5, it showed its age a bit more.
Yeah.
It didn't. The 7 had the borders were too white. The corners were too sharp.
Yeah.
It's weird to think, but it
Wasn't
was a
yours.
superior card in condition wise, but it didn't resonate with me.
No.
I sold it and I kept the 5.
Yeah.
And I could have kept either one. I could have sold the 5 and kept the 7, but I sold the 7 because I liked the 5 better.
Totally.
And so that's a weird, I think that's a bit of a rare occurrence where the higher quality card is the marshmallow card versus, when you have another copy of the same card.
Yeah.
Does that qualify?
Yeah, for sure. In fact, I did the same thing with my 58 Mays. I had an SGC 7 and I bought one that was raw that I loved, and it came back a 5. I way prefer it, technical grade was higher, but the 5 is, it feels, and that's my favorite Willie Mays card. I have other favorites, but of all the, playing days, Willie Mays, the 58 is with the blue background and the smile. He doesn't have a lot of great cards. I got to tip my hat. Mantle's cards are definitely superior, which is hard for, Willie Mays, but it's his first year in San Francisco, so it's also significant for a Giants fan like me.
It's funny you say there was a comment that came in earlier. I didn't get to it, but someone said one of the problems with collecting it might have been Dan. I think maybe it was Dan said one of the issues with collecting Willie Mays is that he just doesn't have a ton of really nice cards, but he certainly has a few.
Yeah.
Those early Bowmans, the 51 and the 52 Bowmans I love both of those. For sure. Todd McDonald says, now subscribe to the Rated Rabbi podcast. Looking forward
to
listening to past episodes. Benny Cromwell, what's up, Benny? Says, thanks for another great show and a great guest. Very nice. Junk Wax Museum says, Rabbi, I may have missed it, but what is your all-time favorite card?
Oh, thank you for asking me that question. Oh, well, I have 2.
Such a hard question.
I have 2. I'm going to give you the card first. That is the platonic ideal of a baseball card. To me, if I close my eyes, it's like the thing is a baseball. Yes. 1978 Topps Reggie Jackson card 200. This is one of my first memories of baseball cards. I just love the picture. I just think I can imagine him on a Sunday afternoon in June, Yankee pinstripes, beautiful white uniform, that big Reggie cut, back knee almost touching the. I like this. This is probably, if you want to know me, this is a special card.
And
can
you confirm? Sorry, but can you confirm? Isn't that also like Iowa Dave's favorite card?
That's right. We're like the Eskimo brothers of Reggie Jackson cards.
Sorry, please continue on that one. I jumped.
Yeah, no, it's a great one. And then the one that is, you and I were talking a little bit before about a card that isn't universally hugely valuable, but is very, very special to me. And this is a very personal card to me. This is 2012 Buster Posey. It's called Trolley Car. It's a super short print. This is from the parade after the Giants won the 2010 World Series. So their first World Series in San Francisco, the first of the three they won in that 5-year span. This is Buster in his rookie year. He's probably I think could make the Hall of Fame. He has a lot of things that usually get guys into the Hall. So only one from those teams besides Bochy. Bochy will make the Hall of Fame. So what's significant about this is I was in Cincinnati. I was going to rabbinical school. I'm a second career rabbi, which I think we haven't talked about, but I am. So I was a little bit older. Was there with my wife, our daughter. Giants won the World Series, and I can remember just my whole life. When your team wins your whole life is different from there on out. And I remember being on my laptop, and I remember my wife, being on her laptop trying to find a ticket out to the parade, and had no money. I was in rabbinical school. She was basically our only earner at the time. She found me a plane out of Indianapolis, which is about an hour and 45 minutes away, drove to Indy, flew out. My cousin picked me up, went to the parade the next morning, got right back on the plane and came back. And to be able to be there, and to be there actually in this moment, I just remember looking to my left and my brother was crying, looking to my right. My dad was crying. It was my cousins, my aunties, my uncles. I think of the 150,000 people there, I was the only person not smoking weed, by the way. I had to work. I had to get back to school. But it was so incredible. And to have that on a card is just it's super evocative to me. So this is two of my favorites, and for different reasons, but both deeply connected to.
Nice. Okay, thanks for sharing that story. You had one more new term to enter into the hobby nomenclature. Before you get that, I just want to go to Bob Boozle's comment, who says, I'm compelled to stream a Deborah Winger movie and stuff my face with marshmallows while holding my Cecil Fielder cards tight. That is quite the image you've painted, Bob Boozle. Thank you on behalf of all of us who just did that in our own heads. Okay, Dave, you had one more term that you wanted to introduce.
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and do that?
Yeah. So the last one is a saying that I have, which is bad haircuts grow back, right? That a lot of the values of those cards, they're not coming back anytime that'll have a positive influence on us in the hobby, right? I don't know what people are waiting for. I spent a lot of time in the last 2 years selling off cards and taking small haircuts, because I recognized that if I was going to lose 15%, even 20% on a card, I'd rather have 80 cents on that dollar, get back into the hobby, learn from it, and move on, rather than hold and hold and hold, which really keeps that 80 cents on the sidelines. Take a loss. It's not the end of the world, right? You keep going. So, take a little haircut. It will grow back. And as like a secondary outcome of that is I love my cards much more. I've really gotten rid of cards that I don't really like that much, even if I've taken a loss. And it's just been, for me, a really positive way to evolve as a collector.
Yeah, I think that's such important advice. Two things can happen if you do decide to lock in that loss by selling that card at less than you paid.
Yeah.
One thing is you're going to take that 80 cents that you got for it, or what, even if you're getting 40 or 30 cents on the dollar, I think it still applies.
Yeah.
Take whatever you can get out of the card, put it into something new that you're going to like more, because that's what you have now. So redeploy those funds into a card that you're going to maybe want to have as a nightstand card instead of a card that you want to throw into the fire because you're so mad at it.
Yeah.
You can turn that energy right around. So I think that's how I certainly look at it. And then the other thing is, if you are more financially motivated and you want to lock in that loss for 40 cents or 80, whatever it is, take that money, buy something else that you can now make money on.
Yeah.
And now you might, because otherwise that 80 cents 4 months down the road could be 60 cents. And now you're just further in the hole. So the sooner you can identify these bad haircuts grow back cards and get out of them, I think the better. Of course the opposite could happen and they could go back up in value after you've sold them. That's happened to all of us.
Yeah.
It's happened to me. I'm guessing it's happened to a lot of people too.
Sure.
But hopefully you have a card now that you like a lot more, so you don't really care about that happening because you didn't love that card anymore anyway. So
Totally.
yeah, I think that's interesting. I think I really like the nightstand card terminology. I really like the marshmallow card terminology.
Thank you.
The Deborah Winger, I just don't know how many people know who she is anymore. So I don't. Maybe
I'm an
we
old
gotta
guy.
change that one to the Travis Kelce mail day. And the bad haircuts grow back. I think that's just a nice way to look at it. So, okay, Dave. Well, listen, we are in overtime. We're over 2 hours here.
Yep.
I think it's time to wrap this up. Man, this has gone by fast, as they often do. But this one certainly went by quickly. So, I'll start by saying to the chat, as always, guys, thanks for being here. Thanks for your comments, your questions, your criticisms. Thanks for all of it. It's all so much fun. And I want to thank you guys for that. So get in your final comments into the chat right now. David, thank you for all the time and for just being so open and warm about doing the show and offering your insights and your experiences and your spiritual approach to it all. I think this has been really great. So I'll give you a moment to say a few words, then we'll go to some comments, and then we'll wrap it up. So over to you.
Great. First, I really want to say thank you to you, Jeremy. Thank you for this really, really fun experience. What a terrific opportunity. What a fun conversation. I feel like I made a new friend. And then on behalf of the hobby, thank you. I think what you put out there as your voice, your thoughtfulness, your integrity, you being a champion of the hobby, like it's really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really enjoy. This is the first time I've ever been live because I'm an old man. I go to bed, So to be here tonight is really a thrill. And I just really very much wish you continued success. And then second, I want to say thank you to the chat. Thank you for being a part of this. Thank you to everybody who brings such goodness to the hobby. I hope to meet some of you in person this summer in Cleveland. And then the very, very last thing is in 2020, when I first started in the hobby, I fell in love with a certain insert set. It is the 2020 Panini Obsidian Supernova insert set, a 20 card insert set. And I've been collecting them in either 1 of 1 or 1 of 5. Of the 20, I have 18. Of that 18, I think it's 8. It might be 9. I have 1 of 1. Then the rest are out of 5. I have 1 that's out of 10 still. So I'm trying to collect them in 1 of 1 or 1 of 5. Here's what they look like. Is it okay if I show these?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Here's what they look like. The McCaffrey is the electric etch blue finite. That's a 1 of 1. And then that's the Mahomes. That's the red out of 5. They're super fun. They're super meaningful. They're emblematic of what to me it means to find a little niche in the hobby and just have super, super fun with it. I have a feeling that some are still unopened. I have a feeling that some are in people's collections. The 2 I do not have, I don't have the Herbert, which is understandable. It's just rookie. And I don't have the Brady, which surfaces. There are 2 out of 5s on eBay, but the people aren't really entering into conversations around true value. And for another time, I'll tell you that I missed. I stood on principle and I missed on the 1 of 1, and I missed my chance on the Brady 101. So we all have those ones that get away. It's like a bad beat in poker, right? You don't remember the royal flush, you remember the bad beat. So
is that another new term?
It might be the bad beat. So if you or anybody you know has this obscure little 2020 supernovas in 101 or 1 of 5, I'm very much a collector for them, and I would very much appreciate any leads you'd be willing to share with me. Thanks.
Well, hey, I hope this can lead you to at least one of these. That would be very, very cool. And we talked about constraints earlier. I love how you loosened the constraint on these supernovas. You're willing to collect for your set, the 1 of 1 or out of 5. Those are different parallels.
Yes.
But you don't care. I don't care if it's out of 5, if it's the red or the black. that's going to complete my set for me. I think that's super cool that you've loosened the reins like that. So first of all, I did notice that. The other thing is that you mentioned that that you've never watched Sports Cards Live in the live format before. You listened to it, and I want to I think that's so. Anyone on here, anyone listening, watching who has a YouTube show but doesn't also upload the audio to podcast, take note of what he said, because the podcast version of Sports Cards Live, it does very well on the podcast platforms, I feel like, as far as downloads goes. And why leave that out there and not because you might not have, you found me if it wasn't for the podcast. So, to other YouTubers who do, podcast type of shows, if you're not already doing it, I think you should consider uploading your audio and creating the podcast version of your YouTube channel. I want to mention those two things, and then we'll go to the final comments from the chat, and then we will wrap this up. Sean Red says, "Thanks, guys. Great show." Thank you, Sean. Todd says, "Thanks." Says, "Great show." Thank you very much, Todd. Dan's Vintage says, "Rabbi Dave is one of your best guests ever." Thanks both of you for a fantastic show. Thank you, Dan. Dan. That's a lovely comment. Mark Santucci gives us 5 out of 5 stars tonight. Jeff McMahon, thank you, Jeff, for the great show. Penguins Collector says, "The greatest online handle in the hobby is the Rated Rabbi." Thank you, David. New podcast subscriber right there. Very cool. Mookie Chilson, excellent show, gentlemen. Thanks for a great evening. Thanks for joining us tonight, Mookie. Laura says that Deborah Winger is vintage. I think that
nice.
I mean, we could all agree on that. You might not like that. I don't even know if she's still alive. Even I don't even know. Mark Santucci wants to let you know, Dave, that he will be in Cleveland. If you guys see each other, be sure to say hello. Yes. Robert Scott, great episode, relaxed vibe all night. Very, very cool. Joe Perot has the Brady that you're looking for, but out of 35 and in a PSA 7. So we're looking at a 1s and 5s, but very cool. Happy spiritual weekend to you as well, Yankees fan. Simon 466 says Obsidian cards have some of the best looking Panini card designs. Very good. I'm sure you would agree. Joe Perot, thank you for being here and good night. Bob Boozle, always good to see you. And TJ Mack says that Rabbi Dave is one of the best and great show. Thank you, TJ Mack. Really appreciate that. All right, Dave. Thank you again for joining. Greatly appreciate it. Everybody out there, I will be back tomorrow night for the PWCC Hockey Auction Watch Party with Josh Madigan from The Gong Show. Always a fun show. Feel free to join us then. And thank you, Jeremy, fellow Flyball. Appreciate that comment. It says good show. Dave, with that, this episode of Sports Cards Live for March the 30th, 2024. And I'm sorry to say it's over because I've enjoyed this one so much, but this show is now over. Good night, and thank you, everybody.